Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. Welcome to Station Life.
Houston on 2 for velocity confirmation. Go ahead and leave steps 4, 5, and 4, 6. We're moving on to
Tracy,
step
you
5.
want to go right now for that activity?
Thank you.
Okay, Tracy, we copy, and that's good information. We'll pass it along.
On today's show, we're going to highlight for you how we here at NASA use the unique environment on board the International Space Station to conduct groundbreaking research to better understand the science of nutrition off the Earth for the Earth. As I learned from my time on board the International Space Station, nutrition is vitally important to staying healthy and fit. But there are some unique challenges to most basic nutrition practices that we take for granted here on Earth. For more insight on the role nutrition plays on board the International Space Station, here's Don Pettit, Katie Coleman, and Chris Hadfield on ISS Mailbag.
This guy, Stray Trout, one of my favorite guys.
Oh, stray trout. Okay.
So wait a minute, the fishing guy is asking about food. I like that.
Yeah, he's fishing for food. So how is the food you eat in space different from on Earth?
I tell people that nobody goes for the food. I mean, it all actually looks really pretty terrible.
The
but
ambiance.
It tastes pretty good. And our food is a combination of dried food that we have to add water to. Mm-hmm. And then there's what we call thermal stabilized, and that means that it doesn't have to, it can get hot, it can get cold, it's still gonna be good food until we open it, and then we can eat it.
And then it's not good food anymore.
I'd say most of it tastes just fine. I mean, I haven't actually
had food.
I haven't had an urge to eat space food since I got back from space, in that it's okay, but
it's subsistence. Okay, it's healthy food, it's good food, it's like camping food, and a lot of it is place utility. It tastes really good when you're up there.
And it's fun. Actually, it's
fun.
Eating food is like a science experiment up there, where you can take your tortilla and you can put peanut butter on it and spin it around and.
So in space you can play with your food and call it science.
Exactly.
Imagine that you have no refrigerator, you have no microwave, you have no oven, and your food has to arrive after having traveled thousands of miles in a really slow, unrefrigerated vehicle. What sort of food could you have? And most of your food is like that. It has to be packaged, freeze-dried, irradiated, like military rations or like ramen noodles or like cans.
You're making faces while you're making this explanation.
Most of the food's that way, or cans of food, lots of canned food that can last a long time. It's like the food you could carry in your backpack.
It's camping food.
Yeah, just camping food. So, but it's good. I kept the same weight over my whole 5 months up there. Did you guys lose weight, gain weight?
Lost weight, gained weight, a little of each.
A little of each. How about you?
Lost weight.
Lost weight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I stayed within.
Was
within
it great?
a kilo.
The space diet. I
Space
loved
spa.
the space diet.
Space spa.
You could eat whatever you wanted.
But there's space utility. There's place utility for the food. If you ate space food for dinner down here, it'd be okay, but you wouldn't go back for a second. When you're in space, in that environment, it tastes really good.
And once in a while we get fresh food, which is really nice. When an unmanned ship, like one of the robot ships, comes up, one of the last things the technicians on the ground will often put in is a little bit of fresh stuff. So you might get some fresh fruit or some fresh vegetables.
Yeah. On ours, we got lemons.
Lemons.
They put in lemons.
We had like 6 onions,
I was gonna say, on ours we got
Spanish
onions.
And we weren't even sure what to do with those big onions.
Well, what do you do with lemons? I guess if you have lemons, you make lemonade.
I'm looking for something a little bag called the Component Repair Expedition Along Toolkit. I did not find it in the bag listed in the location, but I did find it in the same block, right here, 1/2 BTB 1204. And we'll check on that. Get back.
Our International Space Station is an unprecedented research platform in space, allowing scientists from all around the world to conduct experiments that can't be done anywhere else. Over 1,500 investigations have been completed or are ongoing in the following disciplines: human health and performance, technology testing for enabling future exploration, physical science, earth and space science, biology and biotechnology. The wonder of science and space is probably best described in our series, ISS Science Garage.
Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Or maybe mobile applications, like if you're on some kind of vessel and you want to grow some garden greens to spice up your food or something like that. Spacecraft, colonization, you're going away from planet Earth, you're probably going to be using either hydroponics or aeroponics to grow your plants.
Okay, so it's a space, it's driven by a space need, at least
Or NASA has grabbed it and
Right.
is running with it for space.
But it has applications to all kinds of
It does. And we are doing this on Space Station right now using aeroponic gardening techniques to raise plants in the orbital environment on Space Station. I wanted to see, could you have a potted plant in a corner?
And the answer was?
It's difficult to do, but you can.
You can.
Yes.
But it's important because you got to grow. Isn't there like regular experiments on Space Station?
Oh, there are. There are regular experiments that have
for the-
formalized pieces of hardware with terrariums and all of that stuff.
Right.
And they use aeroponics to grow these seeds, and that's part of a big principal investigator
But you
experiment.
didn't do it that way.
No, I flew with seeds, and then I tried to figure out how to do this once I got on orbit.
But your plants were pretty big. You told me.
I had a
zucchini guy-
sunflower. I was able to grow a sunflower that was a
From a
meter and a
seed?
half long.
From a seed.
Yeah, and it bloomed and it made seeds.
All right, so I'm guessing these experiments from these principal investigators didn't have anything really big growing.
Well,
out
they
of it.
can't, maybe they have a growth chamber about like that, or
Right,
maybe
so-
the growth chamber's like
But
this.
yours was out in the open.
Mine was out in the open.
So you had like a garden going on.
Well,
floating
I don't know
around.
what I'd call it a garden, but I had
I
a
think
few
I would
plants.
call it like a garden. So you had like a park. So the space zucchini, what were we saying? You grew your own stuff.
Yeah, I
Right,
wanted
as
to
a-
see whether you could have, without a lot of equipment that took power and computer control and all that, just the
Yeah.
equivalent of a potted plant in the corner in Space Station.
All right.
And so I brought a few seeds. I brought zucchini, broccoli, and sunflower. I
Okay.
figured those would be good things to try, and experiment a number of different concepts of trying to grow these aeroponically, passive aeroponics, so it didn't have pumps and motors and stuff like that moving around, just with plastic bags passively sitting there in front of light on station, using nutrients composted from food. So I started a little compost pile, and I was able to have space zucchini.
And which you didn't eat this, of course.
No, because he became like a crew member. Now, sunflower normally grows really straight
Right.
stalks, right?
Yeah, which are gigantic, some of them.
And so I had this sunflower, a meter and a half tall,
That's big.
and the stalk was like that thick. The stalk was maybe 3 millimeters thick, so it didn't put any energy into making the stalk because it didn't need to.
So the stalk, how big is a stalk on the? They're beefy.
Yeah,
So they're big,
a sunflower that'd be a meter and a half tall would probably have a stalk maybe 6, 7, 8 millimeters in diameter.
This is less than half.
Yes, and so the sunflower is kind of like human beings in that they're inherently lazy, and if they don't have to put the energy into making a stalk to stand up, they don't.
So that stalk would not work.
It would
on
not
the
work
It would
on Earth.
fall over.
Yeah, and another thing, the sunflower stalks are straight.
Yeah.
This stalk was just all curvy
Where
and
it would
everything.
naturally go. So, but what's the ideal? So you have these little things that you really can't get anything you can eat.
Right.
You've had this stuff growing in the hallway.
Yeah.
In space there
Yeah.
in the middle of the module, and you could eat that stuff.
You could.
So what would you think if you're going on a trip to Mars, let's say, and you need to grow some vegetables or fruit or what, I guess, I don't know, whatever you want to grow, what do you think the ideal?
Well, you would want
case
to
would be?
have a genuine design engineered growth chamber based off of aeroponics. And you would want to bring,
You have a farm, basically.
yeah, you'd have a small farm.
A farm module.
That's right, a farm module. I like that concept.
All right, so that's you'd set it up right so the stuff has enough room to grow.
Enough room to grow with adequate lighting, and you'd provide the nutrients, and you'd do it in an aeroponic manner, and you could grow a significant amount of pleasantries to add to your normal food.
Chrissy, let's just down to storage is scheduled at 1525. Please let me know when I have a go
This month, our focus is on nutrition research on board our International Space Station. Living in space for 6 months changes our bodies in a number of ways. We lose bone mineral density, our muscles atrophy, our cardiovascular system gets weaker, and we experience immune system dysfunction. One way of understanding our bodies and how they change during the course of a long-duration space mission is to study our bodily fluids taken at specific times throughout our mission. These samples provide scientists with information on bone metabolism, oxidative damage, body chemistry, and hormonal changes. An increased understanding of the role that nutrition plays in the adaptation to spaceflight has broader application here on Earth. One example is that understanding the relationship of nutrition to bone loss is potentially valuable for patients suffering from osteoporosis here on Earth. We're using the space station to study the risks to human health that are inherent in space exploration. Let's take a look at what we have learned off the Earth about proper nutrition combined with high-intensity exercise in helping to treat better osteoporosis here on the Earth.
The bones in our bodies are alive, growing, and changing all the time. Our bones are composed of different layers. The outer surface of bone is called cortical bone. This is the smooth, hard part of the bone that we can see when we look at a skeleton. Inside the cortical bone is the trabecular bone. This type of bone looks like a sponge and helps to protect the bone marrow. The constant process of bones growing and changing is known as bone remodeling. This process is carried out by specific cells in our bones. Cells called osteoclasts have the role of breaking down our bone and removing any parts that need replacing. At the same time, cells called osteoblasts have the job of making new bone and helping to repair any parts of the bone that have been damaged. On Earth, in healthy individuals, this process is normally balanced so that the same amount of bone is made and broken down. In space, astronauts are exposed to lower levels of gravity than on Earth. This means that they have less mechanical stress put on their bones as they move around. Scientists believe that the bones naturally try to adapt to this new environment by increasing the rate that the bone is broken down by the osteoclasts. Meanwhile, bone formation continues to occur at the same rate as it does on Earth. The result is an imbalance in bone remodeling, which leads to an overall decrease in bone mineral density. While in space, astronauts can manage with lower bone density, but when they return, their bones are less able to cope with Earth's gravity. This increases the risk of fracture and injury. Scientists use many different tests to measure the density of the astronauts' bones. Results show that the astronauts, while in space, lose bone in a similar pattern to people on Earth who suffer from osteoporosis, but the astronauts lose it at a much faster rate. Scientists have found that exercise, when combined with good nutrition and increased vitamin D intake, is able to preserve some of the bone that was previously being lost. Since 2008, astronauts have been able to use a new exercise machine called the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, or ARED. It is thought that this increase in force triggers the formation of new bone, bringing more balance to the bone remodeling process and allowing the bone density to stay at roughly the same level as it was before the spaceflight. It is a significant achievement to be able to maintain bone density in space, but more experiments need to be carried out to see whether the new bone which is formed in space has the same structure and strength as new bone which is formed on Earth. Understanding bone loss associated with microgravity may lead to better preventive care or therapeutic treatments for people on Earth suffering bone loss as a result of bone diseases like osteopenia and osteoporosis, or for patients on prolonged bed rest.
In space and on Earth, our bodies require proper nutrition. Defining nutrient requirements for spaceflight and ensuring provision and intake of those nutrients are primary issues for astronaut health and mission success. After all, you are what you eat. One challenge is providing appetizing food for astronauts that does not require refrigeration and has a long shelf life. While the food is much better than you might imagine, and we've come a long way since the beginning of spaceflight, we do have limited access to fresh foods. If you've ever prepared lunch for someone special, you may wonder how food for our astronauts living and working on board the International Space Station is made and delivered. In our next segment, we're going inside NASA's Space Food Systems Laboratory, as seen on the National Geographic's Space Station Live program.
Eating in space is its own kind of fun. But keeping astronauts fit and healthy is a serious business. Michelle Clinch is responsible for what they eat.
We're making spaghetti with meat sauce.
Space meals begin just like ours do, with a trip to the supermarket.
Thank you.
But the similarities stop there. Spaghetti and meat sauce is just one of the 250 things on the space station menu. Each portion is meticulously calibrated.
We have a database where we maintain the nutritional content of all our products. Calories, fat, protein, carbohydrate, things like that.
But the most important calculation is what things weigh. That's because it costs $10,000 for every pound blasted off to the astronauts. So NASA adopted a reduction technique, also used by the military.
Freeze drying removes a high percentage of the moisture, so typically when we freeze dry our products, we take them down to about 3%.
Each portion now weighs just 1 ounce. Cost to transport, $660. 1,300 miles away, and the orbital Cygnus resupply module is being loaded with the freeze-dried food. And it's time for a few last-minute food luxuries.
These are the tortillas. They're very popular on orbit.
After a daily routine of freeze-dried meals, a fresh piece of fruit is a welcome relief, well worth its weight in gold.
As you can see, we're only sending 3 apples, so you may think that's unfair because we have 6 people on orbit. They may have to share.
This very precious cargo is one of the last things to be loaded onto the rocket.
It's on its way.
3, 2, 1.
Less than a kilometer away from us now.
2 days later, Cygnus docks with the space station.
We're getting ready to berth the Cygnus 1 vehicle. All right, looks really good. Perfect. Perfect. All right, exploding this food.
Including some surprise treats from their families.
Wow, look at that. Tortillas. The real tortillas. Look at that. Real tortillas. Pours it. Wow. Oh my goodness gracious. The greatest hot dog relish in the history of man. Oh my gosh, my wife didn't tell me about this.
What was my favorite food on board the International Space Station? I would say my favorite food had to have been coffee with cream and sugar. But my favorite meal on board was grilled pork chop, asparagus, peach ambrosia. My least favorite food was teriyaki beef steak. It was really mushy. While in space, the food I missed the most was actually lettuce. We don't get fresh food very often on board the space station, and even when we do, it goes really fast. But I really miss the crunchiness of lettuce.
So I just finished eating and I have to enter in what I ate because the ground folks like to keep track of it, keep track of our calories, how much salt we're getting, how much protein, things like that. They track us closely on everything. When we lift weights, we have to keep track of how much weight we lift, how many reps we do. When we run on the treadmill or when computers are recording our heart rate, when we turn on lights, when we turn on the toilet. I learned on my first mission there are no secrets in space. We got video cameras in just about all the modules. So it's basically like being in a big fishbowl. The ground knows everything about us up here, which is not that big a deal, but it's something to keep in mind when you need a little privacy.
As you can see, ISS nutrition research is vital towards improving the quality of human health and well-being in space and on Earth. NASA is constantly looking for ways to benefit humanity, as together we take the next steps towards exploring the universe, searching for answers that matter to us most. Thanks for joining us on Station Life at our behind-the-scenes look at nutrition research aboard the International Space Station. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest research news. Until next time, we're working off the Earth for the Earth.